Fresh and Buds.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you guys are all my buds. And I am joined by a bud that I actually met at my first event ever, Mr. Rylie Groff. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, brother. How are you?
I'm hanging in. We have a lot to talk about today. FaB 2.0 just dropped after the website had a little bit of difficulty there. But you know what? That's as I was saying before to you, probably a good sign that people are that invested in spamming the refresh button. But before we get into anything, I do want
to say it might be a sign that they need to do a server update 2.0 following this.
yeah. I mean, yeah. hopefully the sales that they bring in with this thing, they can afford that. So, we do, or I have something to announce to the listeners out there. The show is now brought to you by my own little Patreon that I started. It launched today as I am recording, which was Tuesday. And you guys will be listening to this on Thursday and beyond. But the Patreon is live. It will be in the show notes. Some things you can expect from it. Nothing's behind a paywall per se. I'm going to do like an additional bonus mini ep each week that I'm calling Freshies. And I'll be talking about anything that I want. It will be probably mostly flesh and blood and food, as this podcast is, just smaller. And some other things you can do is you'll get a sticker from me, and you will also be able to suggest things to talk about on the show in regards to food. You can suggest or send in deck lists for a new series I started today called Fresh Tech, which is just a deck tech show. I started with my own Levi list called Fresh Meat. Runs that Ravenous Meat Axe. You guys can check that out as well. But all future videos will be patron submitted deck lists. So obviously check it out, and if you feel so inclined to join and can afford it, that'd be greatly appreciated. But other than that, everything is still free over here from me. But let's get to Mr. Rylie here. How you doing, man? How you feeling after that little bit of a I guess cluster of clicking the refresh button on fabtcg.com?
Yeah, I think we were refreshing for a solid like 15 minutes waiting for the website to come back up. I think all the demand of everyone else who was refreshing crashed crashed LSS's servers. Everyone was eager to find out about FaB 2.0. And for good reason. I think we found out because there's a wealth of information in that article. There's a lot of things changing going forward.
Oh yeah. I mean, I gotta give a shout out to Flake on the instant speed. I mean, this all came from his interview with James White, and James White kind of hinting at FaB 2.0. And who would know that just him mentioning that would have kind of snowballed into everybody freaking out. And we're recording right now. I'm not even on Twitter. I don't even know what people are saying, but we're gonna give you guys our kind of the first impressions and our takes on it. But before we get that, I want to take a dive into you, Rylie, and get our listeners to get to know you a bit. We met in Hoboken at a Road to Nationals event, if you recall, at a place called Play Hoboken.
Play Hoboken. Or as I have affectionately called it, Hoboken Calling. The Calling Hoboken. Like I don't think we realized at that time, because this was pre US callings. I guess other than Las Vegas had happened. Or had it had
No, Vegas hadn't happened yet.
I don't think Las Vegas had happened at that point. Yeah, because this was Monarch meta still. So we had no US callings. Nationals hadn't happened. And now seeing the caliber of player that came out of that area, that store particularly, looking back at it, there were some really A-list competitive FaB players at that event, man. Because there was Mike Fang,
Yep.
Fino Black, Jimmy Lee, Cody Williams,
Mm-hmm.
um, myself. Obviously, Tommy Fresh was there. Can't forget Tommy Fresh.
I was scrubbing
Um,
out. Don't worry. Yeah.
I didn't even do particularly well there either. I had uh, gotten second at the one I was at the day before, so I wasn't taking it too seriously.
That's good.
Probably should have took it more seriously. But yeah, looking back at that, man, I am in disbelief how many really strong competitive players are in our local community.
Yeah, I will say Jersey has definitely curated I mean Jersey, I mean the tri-state area in general, and I guess Pennsylvania can be sometimes the tri-state as well, depending on who you ask and where in Jersey you are. But that area in general has curated such a strong player base. I mean, I know that the guys that play at my LGS Highlander in Boonton, New Jersey. I mean, all those guys are Pro Tour qualified. I mean, Mike Fang plays there too. You got Yang Ji Yang, who just won the
Hmm.
Battle Harden. I mean,
Hmm.
it's like it's intense, and I had just shown up to this Road to Nationals with a chain deck with no legendaries. I just started. I guess I had been playing like a month, but I hadn't really invested a lot of the money into it yet. And I just started the podcast, and I was just talking to a few people, and you were one of them that I was talking to. And I was like, "Oh, this guy's awesome." And I find that people in the community overall are pretty great, and has been a very welcoming community. Uh, Now, would you say that now prior to that, any of the other Road to Nationals, were they local to Jersey? Because you're out of central Pennsylvania, right?
Right, yeah. I'm in like no man's land, in between Philadelphia and Harrisburg. So I'm like smack dab in the middle there. I'm about 45 minutes either way to either of them.
Mm-hmm.
So as of last year's Road to National season, I think there was one Road to National event in all of Pennsylvania. So to be participating in those, I had to travel pretty far. So I went to New Jersey for almost all of them, which is anywhere from like 2.5 to 3 hours for the
Mm-hmm.
majority. And I ended up playing in, I believe I played in four. So I was traveling pretty far to go and play those events. So it was important to try to show up and do well, because
Yeah.
I wasn't just driving 10 minutes up the road. Like it was a hike for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's kind of it's pretty incredible. I remember talking to some folks at that Road to Nats just because I just wanted to get to know some people, and I talked to one guy. He came down from Maine. He's like, yeah, I was like, I want to hit all of them on the Eastern Seaboard, and I was like, whoa, okay, man, people are serious about this, and I was like, this is. I mean, that was my first indication that Flesh and Blood was kind of set up for success competitively anyway, and it was pretty cool. So let's take a little dig into your Flesh and Blood journey. When did Flesh and Blood come into your life?
So I had been aware of the game ever since it was launched, but I didn't actually get into the game around until around Crucible of War. So a little bit after Crucible of War was released, I started picking up the game, dabbling in it, buying more cards. And I would say I wasn't really starting to play regularly until probably a little bit before Monarch came out. I would say probably about a month before Monarch First Edition was released.
Hmm.
Um, Given that I had no local scene at this time, I don't really, well, nobody really had a local scene per se, because this was at the height of COVID.
Yeah.
It was hard. Even if you had a local store that was carrying the game, you weren't necessarily able to go play in person. And for good reason. So a lot of players who wanted to play regularly were taking to discords, because a lot of LGSs were holding their armory events, their skirmish events online over Discord. So that's where I really started playing more frequently, getting my butt handed to me. In the beginning, I really like it was a slaughter for like the first couple of weeks playing, because a lot of the competitive players that we know in the current meta game all really started. I don't want to say they started, but were playing um, online at that time regularly in these events. So just being able to play with some of these like amazing players, learning from them was was awesome because I got to pick up the game and learn about like efficient play, probably faster than maybe some other players who are first getting into the game. So a little bit long-winded, but I think probably about a month of grinding online, and I started seeing myself have some more competitive success in a field of really strong competitors. So I think that was probably where I really started to get hooked when I was getting my butt
Yeah.
handed to me, and then after a couple months, I was starting to place well, like in these online events against some of the best players. So that was a really rewarding experience for me.
Yeah, and I've always found, and I think it's pretty important for people to know that, you know, it's okay to be playing in a field of really talented players, and as long as they're not jerks, and I don't think most of them are, you can learn a lot, right? You know, you gotta get thrown into the lion's den in a way, and you can, you know, and that's probably what got you hooked. I know that's what got me hooked because I started playing it up at Highlander with all these like top tier players, and when you start to like understand their play, and you get that like first win against one of them, right? And you're like, okay, you know, it feels good, right? Because you started, you know, so far behind it, but like you know, it's easy to catch up. I feel like once you get a grasp of it. But no, that's pretty cool. Yeah, the Discord life it's still pretty strong, I'd say, especially in parts of the world where shutdowns happen pretty regularly. But
Mhm.
um, it's been pretty important for the game, and you know, one of those things like it's they've always harped on flesh and blood being played in the flesh and blood,
Mm.
and it really needed the technology there. But you know, it's something that I don't think would have been possible, you know.
It is ironic how a game called Flesh and Blood that was intended to be played in person grew so exponentially at the height of COVID when
Yeah.
people were physically unable to gather and play the game, and the lengths that the community went to really like overcome that barrier and still be able to play the game that they love. I think it really just shows how dedicated the community for this game is.
Yeah, and it's a real testament how great the game is too. And you know, it's one of those things where I bet, like myself, I came from Magic. Like a lot of people were playing a lot of online card games, you know, like you know Hearthstone or Gwent or even just Magic Arena, and I felt myself kind of get so like even like you know I got out of Magic for a lot of reasons, but like I felt that kind of itch for that classic card game experience of like holding cards. And I would say I think a lot of people would probably feeling the same way, especially if they came from that kind of background. And it probably attributed to Flesh and Blood, you know, especially once they hear is like, oh wow, you know, people are playing this game like online on Discord. It's pretty cool. Now,
Yeah,
yeah,
I just wanted to say that I completely agree with you. Because for me, my competitive card game prior to Flesh and Blood was, people are usually surprised when I say this, but it was Hearthstone.
okay,
I played competitive Hearthstone for 5 or 6 years. I was very invested in that game. But as that game started to move in the direction that it did, I did find myself kind of like yearning for like a physical card game
hmm,
that I could sit down and play with people. I could have those like more human interactions that you don't get when you play over, play a game of Hearthstone online. There's the anonymity. You don't have to be amicable in any way with your opponent.
hmm,
You can rope them out, you can emote them and tilt them. Like there's that is removed from for the most part, and for
yeah,
good reason. When you play in person, I think it just makes for a more enjoyable experience overall.
yeah, and during COVID and shutdowns, like you know, we were all looking for the human interaction in any form. You know, we were so deprived of
Absolutely.
it, and there's no better way to get it than from a card game across the table from someone. where you also have to consider their emotions and and the highs and lows of competitive play. But um, now I want to do these. I've just started calling them the fresh faves because I like to name things, and I want to get your favorite hero.
I just want to also say your naming convention is great. You've managed to incorporate fresh into like everything you do. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean it's Brandon, baby. I took one marketing class at college, and I'm riding that train until I die.
You must ace that one because you're doing an incredible job. My favorite hero, um, this has changed for me over time because I'm the type of player that I don't like to be tied down to any
Mm.
one specific deck or any one specific hero. So it's actually changed for me quite a bit over my time playing this game. Originally, it was Dorinthia,
Hmm.
and then it was Dash, and then I would say probably it was Oldhim for a while. So it really could be any of those three. I think if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Dash.
Okay, all right, yeah. The Dash fans are strong out there. They live and breathe her. I can appreciate that kind of not being one of the tied or not wanting to be tied down. I personally, I mean, I live and breathe Levia, but I appreciate like I always like to branch out. Like I'll sit there. I'm like, I want to build Bolton. I
Mhm.
want to see what he's about. And I mean, and draft, oh, man. We're gonna talk about draft. I mean, that's my favorite way to play, and that's such a great way to kind of get a feel for a bunch of different heroes.
Mhm.
So what's your favorite weapon?
So favorite weapon obviously has to coincide with your favorite hero. That's the Tecloplasma pistol. It's by far my favorite weapon, though. That one's like not even disputable. That's my all-time favorite weapon for
All
sure.
right. Okay. Cool. Cool. And we're gonna talk about how things have to go hand in hand with heroes and weapons in a bit.
Yeah, it's funny that we are. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite non-hero, non-weapon card?
Oh, so this is Exude Confidence. I
Ooh.
really really love that card because I just like the mental play that you can have with that card when you just play it on an open chain with the rest of your cards in hand. Maybe you got like a Snapdragon Scalers, maybe you're gonna go give it go again. Maybe you're just gonna activate the ability 3 times and blow your opponent out. They don't know. So I love putting the decision on my opponent and just kind of watching them mull over the decision of like what do I have to do? What am I gonna do to navigate this seemingly um, innocuous exude confidence?
Now, I mean, I do appreciate that, and I think there's an old card game adage that math is for blockers, and it rings true with exude confidence. Now, I do get to ask, what are your feelings on fire breathing?
I had I had such hopes for that card and until I really like critically thought about it, and I was like, because it does have potential
Yeah,
to be so much similar to like exude confidence, but that initial cost of having to pay two to play it out just changes the numbers so
yeah,
much. I saw somewhere that somebody made it's like a fire breathing OTK deck. I think that's something I need to explore because that sounds hilarious.
yeah. That sounds like a
Um,
lot of fun.
yeah, that sounds phenomenal. As of right now, I'm gonna say fire breathing is just worse exude confidence.
Yeah,
I like the art a lot though. The art
so
on that
cool.
card is phenomenal.
So cool, so cool. Now we do have some listener questions. I have two questions from Capolo, who has a great channel. He's been on the show. I'm
Mm.
giving him two questions because I ignored his questions from last week because he liked to ask about Magic, and I told him I'm banning him from the Discord.
Yeah, get that out of here.
Get out of here with that, But if you ever want to get a listener question in the show, join the Discord, the Buds for anyone out there. Um, Capola asked if you were forced to play mirrors for your whole life or for the rest of your life, which hero would that be? Which deck mirror would that be?
I think probably the most interesting mirror to play is like any of the warrior mirrors,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's a very high skill mirror match because there's a lot that goes into blocking paying attention to what cards your opponents use, how many resources they have available. Like, is there intent already on the table, or are they likely to have a reaction? You know, should you commit a little? Should you commit a lot? Should you use armor? Should you not use armor? Should you save it for later? Should you arsenal a card, or should you be aggressive? Um, I think that is the most interesting mirror match of any of the current heroes or classes in the game right now.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Because, like, at first I was thinking, oh, like Rhinar or something like that. But no, that's just like getting cards out of people's hands. Who cares?
That's just a slugfest. Yeah, yeah.
The next question for Capolo is, who would you invite to your wedding as your best man or best woman from amongst the Flesh and Blood heroes?
Okay. It's interesting that you had just mentioned Brute. Because on your wedding day, you want to try to look better than everyone else, right? And like there's a lot of attractive heroes in this game. I'm certainly not going to invite Bravo
Yeah.
or Sir Bolton or Katsu, right? So you probably got to go with Rhinar or KO. Like they're like the ones that are going to make you look better.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that bachelor party is gonna be pretty nuts with those those heroes.
No
I
doubt.
actually I'm on the other side. I think I would have to go Sir Bolton because it's gonna be just like the most noble speech ever. You
He's a
know,
pretty classy dude. Yeah.
yeah, classy dude. I'm gonna switch these. Remy on from the Discord has a question. How do you passively address other players that specifically build against you without calling them out on it? So for context here, he plays in a group that plays like a lot of blitz, so it's
Mhm.
preloaded out. So he plays Viserai, and they come with the extra blues in their
Mhm.
list the next week.
All of a sudden
Um,
they're playing Dash with Dissolution Sphere.
yeah, all of a sudden it's like, come on now, and so he asks, like, do you fight fire with fire? It happens like smaller play groups.
Hmm.
Kind of feels lousy, but do you kind of
Hmm.
suggest responding to that without verbally calling someone out?
The best like non aggressive way you can deal about that is maybe suggest you play CC instead.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like that really is a problem that's pretty exclusive to Blitz,
Hmm.
because of the format that it is. I could go on and probably talk about this topic for the whole rest of the time we have available, so I won't do that. But s- Blitz is a problematic format for reasons like that, and especially if you've become your local raid boss, like Remy maybe has, if
Yeah,
he's winning a lot, and he becomes the person to beat, right? He's the person that everyone's getting together and saying, how do we beat your deck? And unfortunately, I don't think you can in Blitz. I don't know if you can necessarily address that without also just doing the same and then building your own deck to beat those decks,
yeah.
which could be fun for you if you're into that. But I think if that's your current community and you just want to have a more dynamic and interactive play experience, maybe just suggest you play some classic constructed instead.
Yeah, I would also suggest, doing the old switcheroo.
Hmm.
Show up with something else. They're like, oh, when did you build that deck? I'm like, well,
Hmm.
30 minutes before this, because I knew you were coming with Dissolution Sphere.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. You're
I'm about
playing
to hit you with my
now.
arc smashes.
I was gonna say now you're playing Reinhardt, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then Copy Cody asks, what is your favorite dressing, salad dressing / sauce, and why is it Ken's blue cheese? That's a big meme here in the Fresh and Buds podcast. I love blue cheese, and I'm not afraid to say
You guys aren't giving me a lot of room to budge here. Like I feel like I'm being pigeonholed into picking Ken's blue cheese.
it. You're allowed to. You just might, face some wrath from.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know.
you're not going to be eating any gravies. I can promise you that.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm not going to be eating gravies. I'm weird, man. Like my favorite salad dressing is actually like vinaigrette.
Okay, all right, all right. As long as you didn't say ranch, because like ranch is like the enemy here. But vinaigrette's nice. I understand. That's passable. But
I'll
those
take
are the
it.
listener
I'll take
questions.
passive.
We do have one more for the end of the show that I'm going to hold on to. Um, that was asked actually about your scene a
Oh,
little bit in
great.
central Pennsylvania. How is the scene out there?
So the scene now is thriving. I know we had talked about earlier, how I had to travel so far for the road to nationals because we had no local scene. I was back in those days. I say it like it was a lifetime ago. It was really not much more than a year ago, really. I was going store to store to all my local LGSs, basically being like, have you heard the good word of Flesh and Blood? Do you have time for Flesh and Blood? I was making decks, taking them to stores, giving my cards away. It's like doing anything to get stores interested in carrying and supporting this game for organized play because I was at that time still playing pretty exclusively online, and some of those stores were transitioning to playing in person. And I selfishly was scared that I wasn't going to have anywhere to play the game anymore because all the online events were going to go away, and I didn't have a local scene. So I really did grind for like 2 or 3 months around here, going door to door to the LGSs, talking about the game, asking if they'd support the game, basically making promises like if you get product in from a distributor, I will buy all of it. Like I'll do whatever it takes for us to try to grow this community. I did. I bought so many boxes. I
Oh
had
yeah.
so much. I had so much. Like at that time, it would have been Monarch was coming in. I bought so much Monarch, just to try to follow through and show that I was committed. So we went from like no stores supporting Flesh and Blood to now we have, I think we're up to 6 or 7
Okay.
LGSs that are regularly holding armory events. You can go play an armory event almost every single day of the week here, and it is incredible.
That's pretty awesome. Now, I mean, the commitment to building the game and the community is I got to say pretty admirable. That's pretty awesome. That's what I like to hear. It's really cool. Not to put it plainly. Now, where is do you play at all those stores still, or do you just play at a one or something like that?
I play at many of them. Unfortunately, having a job and trying to manage other parts of your social life and family and things like that, I don't get to go to all of them. I wish that I could. And when I say my local area here, that's a distance of probably about 75 miles.
Yeah.
One way or the other. So um, some are like an hour from me, so I don't always make it to those ones that are farther away. But the ones that are very close to me, I try to get to regularly. I actually just have a new LGS that opened 2 weeks ago, uh, like 3 minutes from my house, and you better believe I was there asking him about Flesh and Blood.
Oh man. I mean, that they held out for a long time. It sounds like.
Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. He was I got to talk to him and he had always had interest in opening a store. But
Gotcha.
until he finally had, the funds and was ready to do it. Again, this is part of like a theme. COVID was
Yep.
happening and it was really hard for any businesses starting or previously established to stay afloat. So he was waiting it out, and I wish him success and I hope he gets Flesh and Blood.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've helped build this scene out in Central PA, which is awesome. I'm pretty familiar with Central PA just because I've the company I work for outside of this wonderful podcast is located in Central PA, and I'm hoping actually to get to some events out there in the near future and check some of it out. So you're starting building this community out there, and you're playing a lot on Discord, and now you're starting to play in stores, and then you're you're doing well in Road to Nats, and then you top eight the calling Cincinnati, which was
That
limited.
Yeah, that was unexpected to say the least. I did not anticipate having quite that much success at my first, major event.
Now, when did you know that you wanted to kind of compete at that kind of high level? Because it's a huge jump from like top eighting like a road to Nats to all of a sudden top eighting a calling, which I believe that was still like 500 people.
Yeah, and I think it was more than that. I think it was I think
Closer.
main event was like pushing 700 or 800 people
Oh
for that
wow.
event. It was massive. And to answer your question, I think it was that event.
Okay, all right.
Is because I went into that with very low expectations. I had been practicing some amount of Tales of Aria limited in anticipation, but I um I just kind of was dipping my toes in the water there, just because I knew I'd been playing a lot. I knew I was probably an above average player, at least at this point of the game. So I really just wanted to see how I stacked up against all the other really good players that were there. Um, I know, like when we sat down and we because it was day one was sealed.
Hmm.
You had to play sealed, and then it was draft after that. Um, so basically sat down on day one with my 6 packs. Yeah, interestingly enough, the person who was doing my deck registration was Zach Bunn of Team
Oh,
Covenant, which is one of the dudes who, when I was getting into the game, I watched quite a bit of their content to learn more about the game, and I sat down and I was like, wait a second, I know you. So that was a pretty cool experience. We actually ended up then playing in the Swiss in round 7, which is crazy. um, it was quite an event. I lost round 1
oh
of
my God.
sealed. Yep, and then I won out after that. So I ended up going. I think we played 8 rounds. I ended up going like 7-1 after that, and then just went. I went 2-1 in the 2 drafts following that, and I ended up top eating. And I was sitting there with again a pretty stacked cast of competitors. It was Matt Rogers, Tarek Patel, Mike Fang, Mike Hamilton, myself, Andrew Yager. I'm losing who else was there. So I apologize, whoever else was in the pot. You have my condolences for not being able to remember. But it was crazy. Like those are all like national champions calling champions. Like just incredible players. So to be sitting in draft pod with those players, I think was when I realized maybe I have some legs to stand on. When it comes
Yeah.
to playing this game.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. I remember that weekend because I was watching from home, and I had I knew Andrew Yager from Twitter. We had chatted a few times. Obviously, that other cast of characters, have
Yeah.
since and before had some great results.
Hmm.
It was exciting. I was like, I saw you. I was like, I met that guy, like 2 months ago. I was like, this is crazy, And it was. I was excited. Obviously, I would have loved for you to take that one home, but I believe Mike won that one, right? Mike Fang.
He did. Yeah, we ended up playing in the first round after drafting, and we had drafted very similar Oldham decks,
Mm.
and it was pretty obvious to me whichever one of us won in that mirror match was probably going to win the rest of the event, because I think the way it ended up being, it was like 2 Oldhams, 2 Briars, and like 4 Alexis.
Oh
Ended
wow,
up being a very strange pod.
that never
Um,
happens.
no, it was very strange. So I felt like whichever one of us won that game had a really good odds of winning the whole thing, and that ended up being true.
Well, I tell you what. So that was Sunday night. On Monday night is when Highlander has their armory, and I showed up, and we were doing a Tales of Aria draft, and Mike Fang had just gotten home from Cincinnati.
Mhm.
He was there drafting, and I was like, wow, this guy just won. I was like, hey, congrats, man. And then we
Mhm.
sat down next to each other, and I'm like, oh no. And then we were both on Oldham, and I was like, oh no. It's like this guy just literally won a calling with
Yep.
Oldham, and now I'm about to get you know my ass handed to me. But
Did he put a clinic on? I'm sure he did, right?
he did, and actually, I was that
Yeah.
was he actually gave me some great advice, and that's the best.
He's a really nice guy and a great player. I have nothing but good things to say.
Yeah, yeah. So are you a limited fan in general? Is or do you prefer constructed?
No, I am by far a proponent of limited formats. It is my
Mm.
favorite thing to play in all card games, whether it's drafting in Magic, playing Arena on Hearthstone. I played so much Arena on Hearthstone. And then drafting in this game in Flesh and Blood is a phenomenal experience as well.
It really is, and I'm on board with you 100%. Do you have any thoughts on Tails Limited here at the end of its life cycle, where we are about to get a brand new draftable set in June, which we have the name of. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Uh, Tails has been my favorite set to draft of all of them, and I've drafted them all numerous times. If I had to rank them, I'd say Tails is my favorite. I really do think it's the most balanced, for the most part. And I think skill, like drafting skill and playing skill, really shows through when drafting Tales of Aria. I think Welcome to Wraith also has a really, really good
Hmm.
draft experience. I would probably put that second, and then the other two are kind of interchangeable. But yeah, speaking specifically on Tails, I really, really enjoyed drafting Tails, and I probably drafted it 20 or 25 times.
Here's a question. Have you drafted Tails since Briar was errated?
That's a great question. I don't think I have,
Yeah,
and I think I would
I
like to
don't think I have
revisit that.
either.
Yeah. No, I don't believe I have. That would be fun though. I'd be into that.
Yeah, I think it would probably affect the sealed portion of that a little bit more
Yeah.
than the draft, as Briar seemed to be,
Hmm.
pretty much the best in sealed. But now we have the name, and we have some information on the next draftable set. Do you have any predictions or anything you want out of the next draftable set? Whether it's certain hero types, or even uh, kind of talents or anything like that.
Hmm. Are we spoiling the name of the
Yeah, we
set?
might as well just say it. It's Uprising.
Okay. Yeah, it's called Uprising, which before this I was also jokingly saying we're only 7 sets in and we're reusing the same verb twice now. We have
Yeah.
Uprising and Arcane Rising. Like, come on, guys. Um, I don't know that I necessarily have any predictions. I'm very, very happy that it is, a limited draftable set. I don't know that I have predictions, but I definitely have hopes.
Hmm.
And I have hopes that they're going to give some more support to some of the less supported classes of the last couple of sets. As someone who loves Dash, I always want, the mechanologists to get some more support. But I'd really like to see, Brute get a lot more support, because I feel like Brute's one of those classes that's always like one or two cards away from being like a tier better, like a really strong competitive deck. Mechanologist has had its time of being one of the best decks, so I'm okay with that. Going away for a period of time, but I would like to pick it up again soon because I really, really enjoy playing that class.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I I would like to see some of the less represented classes get more representation, but I'd also see some of the classes that have just gotten so much support get less for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we've seen Guardians and Rune Blades get nothing but like the most powerful and impactful cards for seemingly like the last 3 sets. Well, I guess at least the last 2 sets. So I would really like to see them get shelved for a little bit and give some attention to some of the other classes and see if we can't, have all the classes meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I'm hoping the same. I'm hoping. I don't think we'll revisit any talents just yet, but who the heck knows? They just released a lore article that was all about the monastery and light versus shadows. Who knows? Maybe we get some more light and shadow again, which I, as a Levi player, I don't mind. We will see. Now, shifting over to CC, you did write a great breakdown of the current meta for Owl Central Games. I'm guessing that is a a local game store
Yes.
to you.
Yep, they are one of my local game stores. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I follow them on Twitter. They follow me, and they seem to be all in on Flesh and Blood, which is great.
Mm.
Now, what are your thoughts on the meta as it stands now?
It's strange because it's still the same meta, right?
Hmm.
Because I listened to last week's episode, you talking to Rick, talking about the banned and restricted announcement, which is nothing,
Yep.
right? So the meta is still the same meta that we saw in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't hate the current meta. I really don't. Because when you play competitive games or like trading card games at a high competitive level, it's pretty common to see, one, two, maybe three decks being the tier 0 decks. And then as you kind of go down the pyramid, go down to tier 1, tier 2, you see more and more decks at all of those levels. And then you're going to have some of those tier 1 decks, the chains, the briars, they're the Katsu, if you want to call them a tier 1 deck, are going to sneak through top 8ing every once in a while, but you're predominantly going to see those tier 0 decks, the Viserais, the Prisms, the Starvos. And yeah, I'm not against the current meta. I don't have anything against the current meta. I was in favor. I don't want to say that I was in favor. I was okay with them saying no changes. I was not okay with the context in which they announced those changes. Was I think everybody's echoing that sentiment at this point. But I do feel like there's still some room to explore in this current meta. So giving it another month to explore the meta and see if anyone can come up with anything else is cool. I like that. My only criticism of the meta, and this is more of a game design criticism than anything, which hopefully will alleviate itself as we get more cards, more heroes, more sets. But there are a couple of heroes specifically that mechanically gatekeep other heroes and classes from being able to compete at a competitive level. And that's something that I don't want to see. I want to see that barrier be removed going forward, because I want every, to an extent, I want every hero, every deck to have some chance of performing at the highest levels. But when you have heroes like Prism in the game that basically stop warriors and rangers from existing, like, that becomes problematic. Or when you have Starvo that's stopping any go wide deck from being able to have go again, or really do anything significant. Like, that feels bad for certain play styles. Took dash right out of the meta. So I think that's my hope, is as we get more support, we'll get an even more robust and diverse meta. But as the meta stands, for a game that's so new, so young, there's only 6 sets out. To have a meta that's even as diverse as it is, and not just everybody playing one deck, I think that's remarkable.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, I think it is a trap that Flesh and Blood does fall into, with the fact that these players love their heroes that they love. So when some of them are not viable by like some oppressive decks like Prism, it gets a little wonky. And it's tough because like you said, that there's always going to be some top tier decks. So. But I agree with that sentiment, to kind of like hopefully not have that kind of gatekeeping going forward. So do you have any prediction for Mazeband and restriction announcement? It was only a couple weeks away now.
Right. Prior to last week, I think I would have felt more confident. But last week really felt like such a curveball. I feel like I've lost all my confidence. It's just weird, right? Because I feel like they heavily implied in that other BNR announcement that they don't want Starvo to be part of the metagame. At least not for the Pro Tour. So either left to his own devices in Living Legend, or I don't know, because part of the Living Legend system, right, is like, even if a hero gets the amount of points required, 1,000 points. They're still playable until the next set comes out, or the next banned and restricted announcement. So it's like they've kind of set it up for him to get to 1,000 points, remove himself from the meta prior to the Pro Tour, and then leave kind of us competitive players scrambling with only a week and a half to test for a meta. So I think the other argument then is, well, you can just test for a meta with no Starvo now. But we're not guaranteed that there's going to be no Starvo. So it's like, are you going to test for 2 metas? I don't think you do, because that's a lot of time, and that's a lot of different things that you need to be taking into consideration. So honestly, at this point, I don't like it, but I'm kind of hoping Starvo does not Living Legend. I'm kind of hoping that he's still playable. I'm kind of hoping that maybe they suspend. I guess we're doing suspend now. Like, maybe suspend one card to make him a little less oppressive, and then we still have a meta with Starvo in it, just not quite as dominant. So, however people are testing with this current meta is still valuable information going forward.
Now, I mean, one thing that I keep thinking about with, because like you could get the points right in this next month with these battle hardens and the calling.
Mhm.
I've always found, and this could just be kind of almost anecdotal and like just kind of an outsider's view. I haven't really looked at the numbers on it, but it always feels to me like international, especially down in Oceania and Europe, the metas tend to be a little more diverse.
Mhm.
I don't know why.
Mhm.
Some of those markets have had the game a lot longer, and some people are just on their decks and they don't really want to change. Whatever it is, I almost, I don't know if worry is the word, but I could see some other heroes spiking the tournament. I can see Viserai getting some of these tournaments and Living Legends off the table. So it is interesting. We will see what happens. So you touched on testing. Have you been testing at all for New Jersey?
No, not really. I've played still like I would say at this point a suboptimal number of CC games since finishing up the Pro Quests.
Mm-hmm.
I unfortunately did not get to go to Indianapolis, so I didn't get to go and play in that. But I feel like I've played enough CC in this current meta that without anything changing, I mean it's always good to practice,
Yeah.
but if you've already tested for this meta, which I did, like I don't know how much more testing you can do in this current meta unless you're really really trying to innovate. And I'm gonna be honest with you, like I'm not a champion deck builder by any means. Like I can draft with the best of them. Like we've already discussed that. But if you sat me down with every card in the game and you said, make the best deck that you can, I am 100% certain that somebody else would make a better deck than me. And I just kind of acknowledge that as maybe one of my shortcomings when it comes to playing these games. So usually I just try to piggyback off what everyone else is doing, to be honest.
Hey, that's
um,
fine. That's fine. I mean, hey, listen, that's you've recognized your shortcoming. Now we're gonna get to work. We're gonna work on that because I
mhm,
also need to build better decks. Except the one
yes.
that I put out in that deck tech that I put out today. That one's amazing.
Mhm, mhm.
Guys,
I
please
do
watch it.
have now I do have now some more competitive players here locally, so I haven't had that really strong competitive scene really prior to now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that we can do some more testing going forward into, maybe not necessarily this Pro Tour, but future Pro Tours, maybe nationals at the end of this year. And maybe actually with everybody's combined power, really innovate and come up with something special that can really perform well at one of those competitive events.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, buddy. I think that's going to bring us to FaB 2.0, which was just announced as we were starting this podcast. We have some notes. We have some ideas.
Hmm.
As we mentioned, Uprising is the new set. We don't really know anything about it specifically, like in terms of lore or any of the heroes or anything like that. But it comes out June 24th, and the big news here, and this is something that a lot of people were kind of looking at, or kind of predicting. There's no difference between first and unlimited going forward. I guess that just means it's just one release.
Yep, just one product is what it seems like.
One product, and there will be cold foils and rainbow foils in there. The cold foils obviously have, you know, more rare drop rates than the rainbow foils, and we will also have these Marvel art, like all art cards, which we've seen with Earthlord Bounty and some other things, but they will have their own symbol,
Yeah, they're getting their own rarity now.
which is whatever. I think that's, uh, I guess it's fine. And
I think that's good. I think because you can differentiate more. Because like some of those cards, it wasn't always totally obvious, right? Like if you looked at
mm-hmm.
maybe some of those extended art cards from Everfest,
Yeah,
if you weren't always really looking, you might not even notice that it was extended art, right? And you might have just like thrown it with your other, maybe your other random foils, not rainbow foils, not realizing it was like $100 card. So hopefully that
yeah,
if that happened to you, hopefully that won't happen going forward.
yeah. How do you feel about the kind of abolishment of the first and unlimited system?
I feel like we were always trending
Mm-hmm.
towards this. I know we only really got to skim the article, right? Because we were trying
Yeah,
to
we're not in
gather
the weeds, but yeah.
talking points and come and do this. But I did note that the one thing was they had said, why not just release first edition and unlimited side by side? Like, they had obviously considered that as an option. So I do like that there was transparency, that they said we did have different options, we considered different options, and this is what we decided to do. We feel like it's the best option. And I have a pretty good amount of confidence in Legend Story Studios.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna trust them on this one and say that this was the best. I think it does take away maybe some of the confusion a lot of new players have getting
Yeah.
into the game, where they're like, well, what is first edition? What's unlimited? What has what I need? What has the cards that I want? Why is this box $3,000 and the other one is 65?
Yeah.
Like a new player is going to look at that and say, what is this? They're going to be probably pretty confused for a game that's only been out for a couple of years. Um, I like that rainbow foils and cold foils are both included in the product.
Hmm.
Um, because I think it still makes cold foils feel valuable, and I wonder if it makes them feel even more valuable because the pull rate on them is going down like pretty significantly. I think we
Yeah.
had seen the cold foil legendaries is one in every, what was it, 200 something packs. Whereas before, if you just bought first edition, you're pretty much getting one per case. So it feels like they're almost twice as rare. Granted, you can get the rainbow foil legendaries at the normal rarity. Um, but I think it maybe makes them more appealing, more desirable for collectors.
Yeah. And I
I don't
think
know. How do you feel about that?
the collectors are important, right?
Hmm.
So, but I will always be on the side that says that collectors are important, but they pale in comparison to the players.
Hmm.
I think the players are the most important. I think this is probably a good move going forward. I think consumer confusion is a real issue with the unlimited and first. I mean, you probably remember when Arcane Rising went out of print,
Hmm.
unlimited, and everybody's like, "Wait, what was the point of unlimited?" And obviously they may have never intended it to be truly unlimited, but like it was it was it
Yeah.
was confusing for people, and I remember everybody like, wait, like, and then the prices skyrocketed, and then they settled down. It's just that's just like almost like any kind of thing that you could you know
I wonder
invest
if
in.
I wonder if LSS's naming conventions ever have anything to do with some of this confusion, right? Because you name it unlimited.
Yeah.
So I mean that does imply certain things,
Uh
right?
huh.
Like not limited supply. Like can get it indefinitely, but I think any of us who've been playing card games for long enough know eventually a print run's going to end because they have
Mm-hmm.
to make room for the new products. But I had also seen people were confused with like that classic battles product. They're like, it's called classic battles, but it's for Blitz. But you have a format that's called classic constructed, but it's not for that format. So,
Yeah.
just some kind of weird like nuance stuff like that I feel like after some time will probably get tightened up. When you have a small game and only so many people to bounce ideas off of, sometimes stuff's just gonna leak through.
Yeah. I think like it's pretty apparent that I mean, at least their marketing team is quite small, and I think
Mhm.
some people do argue that their testing team is also quite small.
Yeah, a lot of people
I
do.
won't speak to that as much, but uh, something actually a cool little note about these Uprising packs, since they are draftable. If you pull a cold foil, it's in the token slot, so you just pull it out. You don't have to worry about money drafting it, which is
Hmm.
awesome.
Yes, we did talk about that really briefly. I think that's great. I think we both decided that was just a net positive for the game, right?
Hmm.
Because whoever opens it, they just get it, and it doesn't go into the card pool, which is great because there was a pretty big like RNG spiky aspect to drafting, where if you were one of the lucky people that got a legendary, like your odds of winning just went up by like solid 25% just by having access to that card. Or if you were playing against somebody that had that, your win rate just plummeted by 25%, and that feels bad because you didn't really, there was no counterplay necessarily for that.
Hmm.
You could
Well,
argue that
actually,
that's just draft as a nutshell, but
right. Actually, I think the rainbow foils can still be pulled normally because we are going to have
Oh, yeah,
rainbow
yeah, yeah,
foil.
yeah. You're right. You're right. It's only the cold foils are in the token slot, right?
Yeah, only the cold
Okay.
foils. So, I mean,
Never mind. Ignore like the second half of what I just
but
said.
yeah. I mean, it's better to catch it down before people are like, wait, no, that's not right. But no, we're smart. We caught it. But no, I think that's still good for the game anyway. Like at
Mhm.
least especially for draft because it does feel bad like opening a cold foil and be like, do I really have to take this thing first pick?
Mhm. Right.
And
Yeah. What if
um,
you're sitting at that top 8 draft pot in Cincinnati and like cold foil Corsham comes across your pack?
oh
You're like,
yeah, you're like, oh, why couldn't
I
you be
really want
rainbow
to win.
foil?
You're like, I really want to win, but that's like a $500 card, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
what do you do in that situation? Like, you probably take the card.
yeah,
So that
absolutely.
so that eliminates that, which is nice.
So that was kind of cool. And then I guess the big news is the history packs. Here or whatever they're called. What are they called? They call them
Yeah,
yeah,
history
history
pack number
pack
one.
1. So
Yeah.
this is kind of like a supplemental set. We have some ideas, some opinions on this. Um,
Mhm.
that's going to have stuff from Welcome to Wraith, Ark and Rising, and Crucible War. It's going to come out biannually. So this is the first one. It's taking everything from the first 3 sets of Flesh and Blood and reprinting a lot of like the staples. We know there's going to be Gorganian Tome. We know there's going to be Spring Tunic and Command and Conquerors in it. But in the English versions, they will all be white bordered. What are your thoughts on that, Riley?
Yeah. So for any of you listening who aren't like physically looking at these cards, like the normal black border, that encompasses your entire card is going to be white instead of black now. Which we've seen in other card games, alternate border colors to differentiate between releases and sets. I'm just to be honest, man, like I don't think it looks good. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I think I was saying earlier, like a lot of the colors that are used in the arts, but also in like the card frames, like the yellow attack icon and the red resource symbol, like the khaki tan colored text boxes, like it just really clashes with that white border, and I don't know. To me, it's not appealing to look at.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I do know there's going to be a lot of people who actually love them, maybe ironically or whatever. Um, but aside from how they look, how do you feel about kind of getting this kind of reprint system out into Flesh and Blood? Because it is a non-rotating format.
Mhm. I I feel like the product is good. The product
Hmm.
is well designed. Just feel like it's a product that was meant to come out in like a year or
Yeah.
maybe 2 years. I feel like we're getting this product just a little bit too early, because maybe not Arcane Rising, but Welcome to Wraith and Crucible of War are still pretty readily accessible, at least in Unlimited.
Hmm.
I don't think there was anyone really demanding that we get reprints for the majority of these cards already. So I'm a little bit mixed because I like the product. I just feel like it's too early for the product, but at
Hmm.
the same time, trying to appeal to a casual audience, or maybe a player who's trying to test out Flesh and Blood, uh, dip their toes in Flesh and Blood, who maybe they're still playing another card game, maybe they're trying to play Flesh and Blood and another card game. I think the floor for entry is probably going to need to be low for
Hmm.
new players, because the game's growing rapidly, it's getting a lot of attention. People want to try it, people want to play it, and but they might not necessarily want to give up the game that they're already playing, so they're going to need to be able to afford both until they're maybe they reach that point like you and I, where they're like, okay, now the Flesh and Blood, this is the game for me, like I'm converting.
Yeah.
uh, so that's a tightrope that's hard to navigate. um, I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions,
Yeah. Same.
because I feel like you're always on the firing block, just ready to get blown away if you make one bad choice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel mixed about it. I think it's a good product. I just don't know if it's gonna perform or sell well in the current market.
I'm probably a little more optimistic. Well, first of all, I think, and I do agree that it feels like it should have come out a year later. I have to imagine LSS is releasing this as a bet, right? They are betting that this Pro Tour, like, really helps. I mean, like, gets a lot of new players, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In that regard, it makes sense. The people have been talking about, and like, card prices for things like Command and Conquer, are a little ridiculous for a Majestic, right? It's gonna drive that price down whether you want to buy the older ones or if you just want to buy the white bordered ones here. Um, but the very cool thing about it is that we didn't mention is that it is also going to be localized for a bunch of different
Regions, right?
languages.
Yeah.
We got German, French, Italian, and Spanish, which actually I'm very excited for because I don't speak German, but I've always liked German cards, and they will be black bordered.
I think that's great because I think that just makes the game more accessible for like anyone who wants to play it. So I'm in full support of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great move by them. And it's kind of nice. I get that it kind of sucks that the English ones are white bordered, but it's nice to differentiate these like first like huge localizations for those players. So and sometimes it could be hard to look outside of America and I guess the English speaking world, but yeah, I think it'll probably be a net positive for the game. But that's
I agree.
that's the product stuff. I guess they did announce that PVE is in development, which I think we kind of knew. The 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 casual side of the game is pretty important, and I think they recognize that. They kind of actually point that out in the article, and I imagine you agree that casuals is pretty much going to have to be strong going forward.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I remember I was having a discussion on Twitter about that not too long ago about how LSS is in a particularly like volatile position because their game is designed to be a hyper competitive, right? It's very low variance. It's in the hands of the player to make the majority of the decisions, and a lot of the outcomes are going to be decided by either who did the most research and who piloted their deck best, which is great if you want to be a competitive player, but that's oftentimes a pretty narrow or small section of a community,
Mm-hmm.
and you need a larger greater community really to support a game and for it to continue growing, because most people don't start out as hyper competitive players. They usually have to start as a casual player, someone who's just interested in trying the game out. So I think by maybe having these history packs and by developing the PVE to make the game more affordable, more accessible, and have different formats that a wider range of people are going to be interested, should be really good for the overall growth and support of the game. It would have been really great if they had PVE and they could like release that side by side with the history packs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
then that would have been amazing, right? Because then you have all these new players and maybe they're getting into it for PVE, so they're able to get cheap and affordable cards to make their PVE decks. Like that would have been a home run. But I understand probably a lot of development's going to need
Yeah.
to go into having that format or that game mode.
Yeah. I mean, they do call out UPF to Ultimate Pit Fight in the article, and Commoner has like kind of like its own rules now in Flesh and Blood land and LSS land. So I think they are recognizing it. I guess it is tough because PVE. I mean, how do you even? I wouldn't even know how to start with that. That's so beyond my understanding of, like, because I know it's something that players want, but I don't even know what that would even look like, to be honest. Like I've played like some people's own like kind of homebrewed PVEs, like to just kind of like test out decks. You just like fight against them NPC kind of hero.
Mhm.
But it would have to be a little bigger scope than that. But it'll be interesting. Some other things they mentioned Classic Battles is going to be an ongoing kind of product, which I don't think surprised anyone. We have the Dorinthia and Rhinar one coming out. After the Pro Tour, I would like to get some Brute cards spoiled, but it's only been Dorinthia cards.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of like we discussed earlier. She's the more attractive of heroes, so it's
Yeah.
gonna get more clicks. Yeah.
I don't know. These Brute players they travel in packs, and it's and I think a lot of them are ready to leave the game if they don't get something. But
I would like to see some nice Rhinar support. I agree.
yeah, or just something for Levia, personally. But I mean, we will see what's in that. And then another big thing is they added this interesting living legend change, right? And I did want to talk about this. So each hero or most of the heroes have their own signature weapon. For example, Briar has Rosetta Thorn. Original Bravo has Anathos. So they have said that if a hero gets living legend, those weapons go with them, which is interesting. And I think their reasoning behind this, and they kind of say, we always intended to have a living legend format once a bunch of things got living legends. It's going to take a while probably, or if they keep printing cards like Starvo, who knows?
Right.
But what do you think about this living legend weapon thing?
Yeah, that was definitely a surprise as we were reading that article. Because like nobody was like demanding or asking for that.
Yeah.
It really felt like it came out of left field. I don't have an issue with it, but at the same time, like none of those weapons, maybe excluding Luminaris or Rosetta Thorn, are particularly problematic.
Yeah.
Um, but I am in favor of the fact that it might open up more design space, right? Because they've said when a hero hits that living legend status, they're going to print a new one in the next product. So I'm assuming that is the same then for the weapon. So maybe maybe there's like a weapon, right, that they want to put out, but currently Anothos is occupying that design space,
Yeah.
right? So they have to maybe clear one out to make room for another one. Maybe more interesting, or maybe not even interesting, but a similar weapon. It just doesn't make sense to have two weapons that are so similar, right? Because like you could argue that Anothos and Sledge of Anvilheim, under most circumstances, are the same weapon. Um, and there's currently several weapons in the game that are kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you thin the shaft, so to speak, of some of the weapons, then you can add some more, maybe more interesting weapons in replace of them.
Yeah. It seems to be all lore based too, because some of them are the common tokens, and then some are like majestic. So some ones to note that would kind of hit, it would be format defining. Well, maybe. I mean, Winter's Whale's huge, right? Winter's Whale is Oldham's. Rosetta Thorn's obviously big, and you almost hope Briar hits Living Legend. Just get rid of Rosetta Thorn now. Raiden, Dustbane, not too worried about that. But Kasai is Centauri Saber, so I don't know. I mean, so that would take pretty much a whole archetype away from Bolton.
Yeah, it would.
And then you also you mentioned Luminaris. We don't have another illusionist though. I'm sure there's another one coming. And it wouldn't be light probably anyway.
Right.
Mandible Claws for KO is interesting. That would kind of really screw over Levia and Rhinar.
I thought it was interesting when we were browsing the list that Data Doll doesn't have a signature weapon. So like,
Yeah.
dang, she doesn't get a signature weapon or fourth intellect. So like, they just hate her.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they were worried about her ever getting Living Legend anyway.
Oh my
But
god.
which is kind of funny. But yeah, it is interesting. I don't know if I'm missing anything in terms of what it means Just want to double check because like I'm looking at like Kano or KO getting mandible claws. Would they also go with them for
I will
CC?
say, while you're looking over that, it does feel pretty strange for let's say I don't know, let's say Kasai wielding Dawnblade. Like
Yeah.
technically that can happen. Like you'd probably never want to do it because obviously there's no synergy there. Um, but yeah, thematically it does feel kind of sinful.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it is interesting. I'm not opposed to it. I think it's I mean, the most likely ones we're gonna see in CC are well, I guess. Wait, maybe I don't think it would make sense. I don't think it screws over. I mean, it would like KO wouldn't screw over Reinar and Levia in CC. I don't think that makes sense, right?
Hmm. Yeah, so like if KO he hits Living Legend and his signature weapon are Mandible Claws, which are a weapon that are used pretty regularly with the other brutes. Does that mean that gets taken away from them, right? Like it's just not available in the pool of weapons anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it
It's
is
interesting.
dependent to which it has to be. Because if because let's say Viserai is going to hit Living Legend and Blitz, you don't lose Nebula Blade for CC. So I think Mandible Claws is probably still safe in CC
Hmm.
forever, I guess, but not in Blitz. So if KO, I don't know. It doesn't seem
Sure,
clear,
sure.
but
It
we're
doesn't. It doesn't. I'm looking at it now too. It doesn't really definitively say. Um, Although it does say so. Like when you're reading the heroes, it lists their adult version, and
mm-hmm,
then it also lists their young version right
yeah.
next to it. Because it says Bravo Showstopper / Bravo, and then it says Anothos. So what does that mean? If Bravo, young Bravo, hits Living Legend, and so does Anothos, does that then mean Anothos is also removed from CC? I don't know because it doesn't say. It
Yeah,
just
I would have to say probably not. I think it's just not very clear. And you know what? Probably right now as we're recording, someone on Twitter is pointing that out and it's being clarified
Mhm.
probably.
James
Uh,
White's answering it as we speak, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. J Dubs, Jimmy Whites. Yeah, but yeah, no, interesting uh kind of update, but I truly think, and I think we had talked about this before, that like before we hopped on, that I think they're trying to make this living legend, this like eventual living legend, kind of almost like a legacy format,
Hmm.
even more enticing for people to play. It's
Hmm.
like, oh well, I get to jam with Winter's Whale again, or something like that.
Hmm.
So overall, what are your what are some closing thoughts on FaB 2.0?
Um, it it had way more information than I was anticipating. Especially because it was just kind of like discreetly that hinted on the website yesterday without any real warning. And then to see really this much of like a roadmap, I really appreciate this. Because I think this gives a lot of players a, like a lot to look forward to. I'm feeling very hopeful reading a lot of these things. Maybe in a time that some people were feeling a little disappointed with, the announcement of last week, and that fell a little half baked. So to see that there really is this much um, content coming out in the game, and they're considering different options. They're weighing outcomes. They're really, at least it appears that they're really critically thinking through the decisions that they're making. That makes me feel really optimistic. Um, I was already feeling optimistic, but this makes me feel even more optimistic about the longevity and continued growth of the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think transparency is very key here. LSS hasn't always been the most transparent, and I think this is a good step forward. And I'm hoping that I believe I heard that that James White will be hopping on a live stream with Team Covenant on Friday. I'm not sure. That's not confirmed.
Awesome.
So I'm sure we're going to get more info and some more clarification by this weekend. But overall, kind of exciting things. I'm very excited to draft Uprising soon, and I'm excited for the future. The
I'm
future
I'm
of
eager
FaB.
to do some more drafting too. There has been a drought
Oh yeah.
with the current supplemental set coming out. Like nobody really seems interested in wanting to draft because the current set's not draftable, and that just feels bad. Like I just want to play some limited.
I know. I'm hoping that future supplemental sets are made to be draftable, but we will see. We will see.
We
And
will see.
thank you, Rylie, for joining me. This has been awesome. I'm very
Oh, it's been a
excited.
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I want you to please plug all of your things that you're doing. I know that you've written a little bit for Owl Central, and I don't know if you plan on doing more of that or just anything in general that you're doing.
Yeah, no, I do regularly talk with them over there. I'm definitely planning to put out some more content as far as I think as of right now, I need to figure out who I'm writing for because I know when I wrote my last two articles, I tried to walk the line because like I wanted it to be useful for new players who are looking to get into competitive, but also trying to have information in there for people who are already competitive players, so they're also getting something out of it. Um, but I think as we continue to see the game grow and get bigger, maybe there's going to be more of a split between casual players and competitive players. So I think I need to figure out who my main audience is. Like,
Yeah.
is it gonna be those competitive players, or is it gonna be the more casual players, or maybe I can do something for each either way. But I'll definitely have some more articles coming out for Al Central soon. Um, I do also run a local community page for South Central PA here, continuing to grow. We're almost at 150 people in that group, and these are like players that actually like come out and play at our local events. So we use that mostly as a format to track different events, ask questions, people trade cards. We talk about announcements for the game. So that's been a huge asset for me as far as growing that community. If anyone else who is in a similar position that maybe I was in not that long ago, where you might not have a strong local scene and you're looking to help build one, I highly recommend maybe making a Discord or a Facebook page, something like that, so you have a place to gather everyone together, so you can talk about what people's ambitions are, what their hopes are for that area. But anyway, off of my soapbox, you can follow me at FaB Rylie on Twitter. A little late to the Twitter game, but I have been trying to be more active in using that. So if you want to interact with me, that's going to be the place to find me for right now.
Very cool, very cool. And I'll put all that stuff in the show notes for people to check out. You guys can continue to find me on Twitter as well at FreshBudsPod. You can email the show freshbudspod at gmail.com. Check out the YouTube. Putting more content on there right now. It's just Fresh and Buds on YouTube. And then I mentioned the Patreon and also Discord. The Buds that will be in the link tree below as well. We have a good time over there. We got a lot of players from all over the place and all different play styles, and most of them are always down to jam a game, and it's a good time over there. And I always like to end the show talking about food. And one of the buds, a longtime bud of mine, Gary, living like Gary, who is from Central Pennsylvania, lives in Philly now, did ask Shady Maple.
Oh,
It's apparently some place in Central Pennsylvania. He asked, "What is your favorite dessert there if you've gone?"
oh man! So you've never been to Shady Maple, Tommy?
I know I haven't. I would like to go,
Uh,
in like tandem with going to an event out there.
yes. You gotta go at least for the novelty of it at some point. Shady Maple has a lot of notoriety. Probably for a lot of good reasons. It is a smorgasbord or a buffet style restaurant. I'm not far from it, actually. It's only about 15 minutes from where I live.
Oh,
I have not been in quite some time. They were closed down for the majority of COVID. It is a sight to behold, man. It is there is an almost seemingly unfathomable amount of food that goes through that place. And that's not to discredit it. The food's great.
yeah, the food's good. I mean,
But,
like, yeah, it's one thing to
yeah,
have a lot of it, but if it's good, it's good.
it is good food. It's a little pricey, but you do get a lot. Um, so it was what was my favorite dessert.
Yeah, favorite
Um,
dessert or any item out of shady
yeah, I
people.
I really like Boston cream pie.
Ooh,
That's like one of my favorite desserts. And usually they have a couple slices, in there that you can get afterwards if you somehow still have room in your stomach to get some dessert. They have a lot. They have everything though. There's like you can get cookies, you can get
ugh.
cake, you can get other baked goods. They have their own bakery. You can get ice cream. You can get a slushy if you want. There's like a slushy machine. Like anything you can imagine it's probably there in some capacity.
Oh man, now I'm hungry. Um, that sounds awesome. I'm hoping to get out there. We need like a calling Central PA, a calling
Yeah,
Hershey or something like that.
Philadelphia, something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Philly. Yeah, Philly would be great. I mean, actually, we had run into each other at the Battle Hard in Philly. Um,
At the SCG con. Yeah,
yeah,
yep,
SCG Con. Yeah, which
yep.
was fun.
Yeah.
Um,
I went 5-1 that day and bubbled out.
oh yeah,
It was
that
so
was.
unfortunate. I think I was like at 10 or something. I was like, oh, I felt so bad. That was a rough one.
Oh my god, yeah, that was a that was quite the interesting tournament. For a lot of weird bubble outs there from what I
Mm,
remember, but
it's
um,
nothing like Starvo's first revealing at a literal casino.
yeah, that was it was it was quite fitting. It was fitting to say the least.
Hmm.
But Riley, thank you so much. We'll have to do this again soon. Hopefully, play and see each other again soon. I'm sure we'll see each other in Jersey.
Yes.
Um, but everybody, please have a good week.